will be available for replay in a couple of different places, and I'll be also referencing some resource material. I've set up a link on my website specifically for this series, so you'll be able to access the slides, other pieces of information that I reference. It'll all be right there housed in that one section of the website. And I'll give all that information at the end, and you can have that for your reference. Additionally, I wanted to let you know that really the purpose of this webinar is to set a framework. It's a set of framework so that you can give thoughtful consideration for how you're managing your talent right now, with a specific emphasis on dealing with difficult employees. It's also designed to be a thoughtful assessment. So as you move through the entire webinar, you'll see places where you could actually have discussions with your key employees, your key leadership, to facilitate, some action, hopefully, that you'll be able to plan from being a part of the series. Also, it's designed in a way that you can mimic it back at your organizations. So you can, in fact, do that through just downloading. I have no problem. Download the slides. If I can help in any way, contact me if you need to facilitate this with your organization, and I'll be happy to help in any way that I can. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start off with a very simple question, but a very important question, and it goes like this. It goes like, oh, there it is. We're going to start off with this question. How would you define difficult? Because when we think about the phrase difficult people or difficult employees, sometimes we will label the person as difficult. And what I want to invite us to do as we lay the foundation for the series is looking not so much at the person, but really looking at the behavior. And in that, we need to define and pinpoint, because we can say generically, oh, this person is just really difficult, or this person gets on my nerves, or is a pain in the butt, or whatever. But until we really sift through, okay, what does that actually mean practically, we were not going to be able to, number one, get us out of pain and other people out of pain, but also to develop specific strategies for how to really address it. So I'm going to start out the question again. I'll repeat the question again. How would you define difficult? Now here's the part where you use your question section and shout out your answers, and I will read them back to the group. So the question is, how would you define difficult? Okay, let's see some definitions here. How would you define difficult? Type in your answer and I will read it back. Yes, you will. Oh, there's a question. You will receive a copy of the PowerPoint upon completion. It's going to be on that resource link, Jamie, so that you can have access to everything and all the resources that I refer to and links and all the kind of thing right on the site. Okay. All right. How are you going to define difficult? How would you define difficult? Let's see some answers. Don't be shy. Okay, causing conflict. Impeding productivity, argumentative, multiple personalities. Okay, like that's literal? No, just kidding. Multiple personalities, okay. Overly negative, yep. Uncooperative. Someone with a poor attitude. Ryan, thanks for that. Kenneth did on uncooperative. See, Eric, providing and managing and documenting interaction. Okay, Shauna, confrontational attitude. Robert, making excuses. Okay, Rick, requires constant supervision. Okay, that's interesting. Jamie, negative. Okay, you can see some recurring themes here have to do with attitude, negativity. Sue has disruptive. Defensive, blames everyone else. Uncooperative. Oh, Jerry, high maintenance. Thinking of self-interest rather than group interest, that's Kenneth. Okay, Amy has not a team player. Rick, a person who does not conform or conforms begrudgingly to company policy. Okay, Deanna, difficult is when a person drags their feet, puts a stop to moving forward. And Rick, drama, drama, drama. Okay, that could not be more perfect. I'm going to actually stop there. And Diane has unpredictable, Patrick, arrogant, entitlement. Okay, you guys have great stuff. Michael, I'm going to add his as a final. Possessive over job responsibilities. Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, and then refuses to become accountable is Deneen's, I think that's her name. And then Emily, one more. Doesn't want to be micromanaged but can't work independently. Okay, here's why I asked that. You have to be clear in your mind what it means for you, for someone who's difficult. Because as you noticed, that list, although there were some similar themes, that list was pretty diverse. So in asking that question, what's the difference, defining what's difficult, then you also have to say, okay, if that person is difficult, is it that they're just difficult, or is it that they are maybe different? Okay? So in looking at difficult behavior then, I'm going to add another word to that, and that word is unhealthy. All right, so let's set aside two categories. They're difficult. They're unhealthy. Okay, so tell me what you think unhealthy behavior looks like. What's the difference? What's unhealthy behavior? Let's look at some examples. Unhealthy behavior, what does that look like? I had someone put putting others down, but I'm thinking that was the original question. Unhealthy behavior, what does that look like? I know some questions are coming in. Unhealthy behavior. Destructive behavior to self or others, okay. Having destructive habits, okay. Self-destructive, codependent, ooh, okay. Toxic, poisons communication and relationships. Destructive, not a team player, a pot stirrer. Okay, now, this is Rick's response. Now, here's the thing. And by the way, no right, wrong, good, or bad answer here, but I want you to think about it. Is some difficult behavior, does that spill into unhealthy? Would sometimes you call difficult behavior unhealthy behavior? Causing inter-office disputes, verbally abusive. Yes, verbally abusive. So as we're going through this, let me make a distinction. Is a bad attitude in the same category as abusive behavior? I'm thinking kind of not, but I want you to answer that too. So we've got two questions going. What's unhealthy behavior, and is a bad attitude like unhealthy behaviors, or is there some crossover? And by the way, this is responsive, so you can say yes, no, or add your comments. Actions that affect others, Karen says. Jerry, always causing friction with others, okay. Enjoys being bad, okay. I would say that's definitely unhealthy. Okay, the answer was no. Patrick, thank you. Sue, unable to cope with the daily routines, life, and rigors of the job, wants to be his or own way, or no? Yes. Okay, Amy says for unhealthy and difficult, two separate categories. Okay. When you remember I said that this webinar is really about you being able to discern differences. So if you're taking, I really hope you're taking notes. In taking notes, I'd like you to have two categories. Okay, category one is difficult. Category two is unhealthy. Okay, now as we're going through this and as I'm asking questions, you may say, okay, hey, well, that belongs in the difficult category, but it also belongs in the unhealthy category, and there's some crossover. You may put two behaviors in the same categories and then draw a line between the two. Okay, you may, and you're free to do that as well. All right, I'm going to add some more, two separate categories. Anything else that came with that? Okay, so those were the answers. So really, what we're looking at here is not only difficult, not only unhealthy, but I'm going to ask you to add a third category, and that is different. We have difficult, we have unhealthy, and we have different. Now, is it possible that some of the things that bother, and we're going to use us, we're going to put ourselves in the situation for the moment, right? And then we can translate it to other things. if you have a employee that bothers you, that you consider difficult, is it possible that their third category of different is where some of those other things might lie? Is that possible? Yes or no? Is that possible? Yes or no? You guys can put, okay, Deanna says yes, Sue says yes, yes, yes. Eric says yes. Okay, there's definitely going to be some things that are different, difficult, and unhealthy. Here's the charge for this particular series and for part 1. We've got to discern the difference. And we've got to be able to break it down in a way that then we can take action on it and specifically coach it, and that'll be part of the series actually in part 3. Okay, but for right now, it's super important to think. Okay, so what are the 3 categories, and where do these really lie? All right, so let me give an example of something that really could be considered nothing more than different. Here's an example. And when I do a whole workshop on this particular series, the series is actually based on a workshop, we go through using some frames of reference for how to identify different. So one of the frames of reference I use is a personality tool. And this personality tool has some behavioral orientations that I think are really meaningful in a team dynamic or collaborative and dynamic, which also can be irritating. Okay, so here's and I can't wait to hear the responses on this one. In this particular category, you have here, you have the you have a situation where someone has a high need to direct, and that's someone you put them in a room, and no matter what happens, they're going to take over. And the key word here is need. They need it. They need it as a interpersonal social satisfier. An interpersonal social satisfier. They need it. It satisfies something. Okay? Now, the exact opposite of that is a low need to direct. Meaning, hey, I can put this person in a room and they will do other things other than try and take over and control things. Okay? They don't need to direct. They don't need to be in control. Can they be in control? Can they take control? Yes. Or direct. But do they need to? Not necessarily. Okay? Now, let's go to the left part of the graph, and we have a high need to connect. High need to connect. That means to be with people. Okay? And again, our operative word here is the word need. And then on the opposite end is a low need to direct. Okay? That means, a low need to connect. That means they don't really need to be with people. And in fact, for some people in this category, it can be actually exhausting and irritating for them to be around people for long periods of time. Okay? So we're framing out an example of different. Now here's the question that's super important as we move forward. Sometimes, well, I'm not going to say sometimes, many times, these core behaviors tend to irritate other colleagues. And because of these specific behaviors, it's actually, someone might be called difficult. So here's an example. I think that people at this end of the spectrum, low need to direct, sometimes get labeled bad things, like lazy, lack of initiative, they just they can't lead. I have to babysit them. It's all sorts of labeling that goes on, and I think they kind of get a bad rap, honestly. Also, too, I think another group that kind of gets a bad rap are those who have a low need to connect. They might be considered, antisocial. They don't want to come to functions. They hold out in their office all day or their cube. They don't really speak to people. They're big one, labeled not a team player, those kinds of things. So what's interesting is when you look at, for example, personality needs or behavioral needs or social interactive needs, something very basic to personality wiring can be translated into quote-unquote difficult behavior. Okay, equally, and this really plays out, by the way, when you have managers managing people who are the exact opposite of them. Here's an example. And by the way, as managers, we tend to manage how we like to be managed, in some cases. So let's say there's a manager that has a low need to connect, okay? And a low need to connect person would rather get instructions and be left alone. Leave me alone, I will do my job. A person with a high need to connect not only wants the information, wants to be directed, but then wants to keep chatting about it or keep connecting about it. Now, let's say you have a low need to connect manager who manages someone who has a high need to connect. What's going to happen? You tell me. Here's your chance to chime in. What would happen? What could be some situations or issues with a manager that has a low need to connect, that has to manage someone who has a high need to connect? What would that look like? Let's see some answers. And maybe you're even in that situation. Oops, sorry about that. I just popped us out. Okay, what would you say? Different could include styles and values. Yes, and Phil, values is also a part of that as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Can differences be the result of the expectation of the position? Absolutely. Michael, I love Michael's. Kaboom! That's what can happen when you have a difference like that. Okay, waste time reporting progress. Yes, Robert, that's absolutely true. Constant conflict, right? Because what we're talking about here is what I need versus what I'm getting. Correct? Yeah. And so manager brushes off the employee. Yeah. They'll get annoyed because the employee will be constantly bothering them and asking questions. Yep. Employee is going to drive manager crazy. Will seem to be high maintenance, too needy. Right. So here's Dina. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Deneen, it looks like. Here's the thing. If you have an employee who's going to drive a manager crazy, who seems to be high maintenance and too needy, that basic fundamental need, without effective coaching or boundaries, that manager will say that employee is difficult, right? Because, by the way, Deneen said employee is going to drive manager crazy, will soon be high maintenance and too needy. When we talked about how do you define difficult, that description was actually in the original how do you define difficult. Now we're thinking maybe, and it may still feel difficult to that manager, but now we're saying, oh, but really this is about someone having different needs. Okay, let me keep going. The high need to connect person keeps bothering the low need to connect by talking, and more talking, causing direct conflict and wasting time. Yeah, Sue, you sound like you actually have had that experience. You may not have, but it sounds very, very true. Okay, so you can see that works that way. Now, let's do this. I want to look at, I'm going to go back to our chart again, and let's do this. You have, this is another like management conundrum. You have a low need to direct manager who is managing a high need to direct employee. What does that look like? I want to see what your responses are to that. I'm going to pop out of my annotation here and put back in. Okay, what does that look like? They'll get annoyed because the employee will be, oh, okay. Okay, questions, answers regarding they don't listen, okay, chaos, manager feels employee wants to take over. Yes, very, very, Jerry, that's a very good one. Employee is always challenging the manager by always trying to take control. Yes, that I've actually witnessed that. Yep. Who's in charge, Kathleen? That's a great point. Yep, who's in charge? So you can see that there's a dilemma here just from the lens of personality. And here's what I think is really interesting. Without really effective management, something as simple as personality differences can turn or translate into a difficult situation. Or, someone who's a basic employee. has basic behavioral needs, can have those exacerbated based on the kind of manager they have. Okay, and that's why I think it's important that managers understand what are the basic needs of the people that they lead, so that they can respond and coach effectively, so that it doesn't turn into something where it does become difficult. Another employee will seem to be usurping their power and taking charge. Yes, and some people might call that old school word, but insubordinate. Employee will feel frustrated that they aren't being directed. Yeah. Yes. Very, very good point. Yeah. Anything else from the high need to direct, low need to direct? Okay. So you can see there's really, this is really just a fundamental example of different, and yet it can turn into difficult. Now, one other example I want to give you real quick, because I think this is really useful in team collaboration and leading dynamics, is the difference. Another example of different, but related to this. This is natural decision-making styles. In this grid, the folks who are between the high need to direct and the high need to connect tend to be more spontaneous in their decision-making. Those who are in the grid between high need to direct and low need to connect tend to be more decisive. By the way, this is not an all or nothing, but just in general. The person between a high need to connect and a low need to direct, they tend to be inclusive. And the person who is methodical is the one that is in the area of low need to connect and low need to direct. So there's another example of just basic behavioral orientation differences that would not otherwise be considered difficult, but can turn into difficult. So my question is, before I advance to the next slide, is how can these decision-making styles in different leaders and or team members, how can that end up feeling difficult? Okay, so how can these different decision-making styles end up feeling difficult? Spontaneous, decisive, inclusive, methodical. Okay, this is a housekeeping from Eric, by the way, which I love this. Housekeeping note: if people want to see you more clearly, the video can be resized by dragging the equal sign up with cursor. Thank you, Eric. Eric's the tech guy on our call today, so I appreciate that, Eric. See how informal we are? I just love it. Okay, so the question is, with the different decision-making styles, how can something that's very basic, that really is something different, turn into something and feel as if it's difficult? Okay. Always causing friction. Yeah. Another one. Enjoys. Okay. Methodical people take too long to decide. Yep. Spontaneous often considers methodical as a lack of leadership. That is really, really, really good. It's Phil's. Methodical people, if someone is too inclusive, it can take forever to make a decision. If spontaneous, can seem flighty. Diana. Okay, so here's an interesting thing. Let's say you have a manager that tends to be inclusive in their decision making. Okay, we know inclusive means I want to get everybody in on the decision, right? Some people call it consensus building. At some point, though, somebody's going to make a decision, right? And if you have managers that tend to not have a very strong self-esteem and tend to also have inclusion as a part of their natural decision-making style, that low self-esteem can translate into the need for approval versus the need for consensus. And so that also can cause a lot of frustration. Imagine an inclusive decision maker with someone who has people who are decisive on their team. Okay, spontaneous often considers methodical as a lack of leadership. Methodical people take to, okay, along to the side. Alrighty. So you see where we're going with this. All of these things that could be considered really just different really do turn into difficult. And I think a lot of it has to do with a lack of understanding. A lack of understanding. Okay. So let's look at then, okay, the actual definition from Webster's of difficult. This is kind of crazy, right? The actual definition. And I love these. I love these because it puts it into several different categories. The first one is needing much effort or skill to accomplish, deal with, or understand. Now, and in this definition, I want us to be honest. Sometimes, as managers and leaders, it just takes a lot of effort to deal with people. You know, I know as a manager, it's, you know, in every area of life with relationships, whether it's in a professional and personal, sometimes it really takes effort because it's so different than us. Sometimes it's easier to just manage people who are just like us. So difficult could mean it just takes a lot of effort. And by the way, it also can take some skill. My personal belief and my experiences, there's a lot of managers who aren't very skilled at dealing with people who are very different from them. Okay? All right, difficult can also be categorized as causing hardship or problems. Now, from your original list that you shared with us, the group, a lot of those behaviors probably fall into that category, I'd say. And then you have number 3, not easy to please or satisfy. I love these definitions because it also is a way for us to sort out, okay, is this person just kind of bugging me because it's a personality difference or something? Or is there genuinely difficult behavior? Or has different turned into difficult because this person hasn't been managed effectively? Has difficult turned into different because the person hasn't been managed effectively? So when you get the slides and you download this to use as your guidebook for sorting this out, please consider not only those 3 categories, difficult, unhealthy, and different, but look at these definitions and say, okay, now for the people that I have in mind or the person I have in mind, where does this really lie? Where does this really lie? Okay. All right. So part of the thing about difficult is where there are natural sources, natural because sometimes if it's natural it could be just different, not difficult, but natural sources of conflict which can cause disunion and judgment and labeling. Okay, and so those would be personality. I use it as our touch point as we're moving through this discussion. It is natural work style preferences, how people prefer to interact with the world and the universe. Alrighty, I was having this conversation. I have a great assessment that I use in my practice, and I was having this conversation with a colleague who's a psychotherapist, and he's worked with people for a number of years. And I said, we were talking about personality and conflict and difficult, and I said, okay, of any kind of personality behavior that really bugs you, what is it? And he said, you know what really irritates me is when people are like overly friendly. Like when they're overly friendly, that just is, it's just so irritating to me. And I don't even, I know it's not logical, but it really is. I think they're like disingenuous and, it just really like kind of gets on my nerves. Okay, and he's like a behavior specialist. So personality definitely is a part of that as well. And that goes to social interaction preferences. Here's another one, satisfaction orientation in terms of the kind of work people like to do. So, for example, there are some people who prefer working with tasks. They're the get-her-done people. Let's not have a lot of discussion about this, okay? Let's have a quick chit-chat. Go for it, okay? And then there are people who love working with people. You can go back to that chart and probably see where those people lie. Right side of the chart is more task, left side of the chart is more people. They like working with people. They like sharing information. They like connecting. And that's a satisfier, and that's actually a work orientation. When I go into work, I love tasks, in fact, tasks and information, or, when I get most out of my job I really like, it's the people. And so that can be a point of irritation as well, or conflict. Values, and someone else said that earlier, which was really, really good, the values piece, and that is really what matters most to people. Now, where values seems to surface a lot, as I've done workshops across North America, is a discussion between generations. And it seems like, so we could even put generations as a part of a source of conflict, disunion, or judgment. And here's what I hear, and I'm not saying it's true, here's what I hear. Baby boomers. as it relates to Gen X's and Gen Ys, baby boomers will say, you know, they have completely different work ethic than we do. And Gen X's and Gen Ys will say, well, baby boomers, they just are too serious about work, and you know, they just like, you know, sometimes I just don't want to work that hard. So there's a great book on the market called Generation X, and there's a quote in there I absolutely love. It goes like this. It goes, baby boomers live to work, and Gen X's work to live. I don't know if there's truth in that per se, but it definitely reflects a sense of values. And now we have millennials coming on the scene. And boy, that's like a whole nother set of differences in how people orientate themselves towards life and orientate themselves towards work, and how that can create conflict, disunion, or judgment. And it all relates around values. It all relates around values. I want to ask a question. Have you seen generational challenges in your workplace? Have you seen generational challenges in your workplace? If you chime in with a yes or a comment, or what you feel is the most challenging generation to work with, please share that now. Have you seen generational challenges where you work? Okay, yes, with a big 3 with exclamation points. Darlena, yes. Emily, yes. Nicole, Phil. Oh, yeah, Sue says. Okay, lots of yeses. Okay, Jamie, yes, the millennial generation is tough. So I appreciate your candor, because this is kind of what it's all about. No judgment here, you guys. There's no judgment here. We're just, you know, having a discussion. Okay, very interesting. Yes, baby boomers are very judgmental. Very interesting. Very interesting. Diana, yes. They have more of a selfish approach, not so much about the team. Okay, now that's interesting. So selfish, like who's the selfish approach, Jamie? Can you tell me who? I hear Rick says, yes, willingness to accept additional responsibility. General challenges are more related to technology. Okay, now that's another component altogether, but that's, yes. Younger is more interested in partying, and work is just there to do so. Like, you know, like live, like it supports their lifestyle, right? That's kind of what people would think. Yes, but millennials are very creative and energetic. Right, Shankar, yes. And socialize. Yeah, they're big on socialization. Yes, older generation transitioning into technology era and evolution of the company. Michael, so right, there's some challenges there as well. And even, you know, even with technology, you guys, that's a values thing. You know, how much does it matter to me to know this stuff and integrate it into my life, not only personally but also professionally? And then there's, oh, the millennials. Jamie was talking about millennials. Gen Y, they feel entitled. I deserve it without working it for it. Okay, interesting. Yes, stuck in old ways. Millennials are not consequential. If I don't get it done or accomplish a task, not a big deal. Someone will pick it up. We're all part of the team, right? Okay, appreciate what you've shared. Appreciate what you've shared. So, again, there are sources of conflict, disunion, and judgment that comes from values, and we see that reflected from generational differences. Okay, and then I've also asked, is there anything else that you would add related to within your workplace that you would see are sources of conflict, disunion, and judgment? Anything else that you would add to this list? Because I've got personality, social interaction, work satisfaction, and values. Anything else that you would add? Social media. Great point, Nikki. Great point. Social media. The use thereof or not. Yeah, even in integrating it and how you access it and how often you access it during the day. Great point. Yeah. Long-term employees versus new hires. Okay, Jamie, excellent. That's one as well. Yep. Flattening of organizations in general. Yep. Yep. Very good. And you know, that actually your responses reminded me that there's some institutions or organizations where there's not a lot of movement. What I mean by movement is coach up or coach out, but you have tenure, you have, like in government, different levels where people can go to. They're getting close to retirement, and you know, they don't want to leave, so it could be those as well. So what we want to do is identify our sources of conflict, and we're going back and thinking, okay, from the very beginning we talked about our 3 categories of difficult, unhealthy, and just different, and where the sources of conflict could be where it is just different that might be turning into difficult. All right, so so I'm going to move to the next question then. In general then, why, before I give my answers, why do difficult employees exist? This is critical that I hear your answers first before I share mine. So the question is, why do difficult employees exist? Motives. Okay, Kenneth? Okay, excellent. Choices of places to seek information. Everything on the net is reliable. That might be misunderstandings. Okay, why do difficult employees exist? Okay, job security. Because we did a poor job evaluating them prior to hiring. Okay, now here's where I gotta say, you guys, I appreciate your being honest, because here's where the assessment takes place. So thanks, Michael, for that comment. Because people have different personalities. Okay, thanks, Emily. A need for attention. Yep, Rick, that's very true. And by the way, some of that's related to personality, some of that's related to emotional intelligence, and we're going to be addressing emotional intelligence later on in the series. Expectations not clearly defined. Thanks, Mark. Yep. Experience levels. Yep. It is part of their life baggage, right? Okay, Patrick, sometimes people are not carrying baggage, they're carrying trunks. We don't know that until we actually get to know them on the job, right? Competition and innate human conflict. Kathleen, difficulty is only perceived? Yes, and that's part of the theme. Yep. New changes in their personal life? Yep, that's very true. Okay, excellent. Okay, anything else? You guys want to chime in on anything else? Why do difficult employees exist? Anything else you want to chime in? Anything else? I see some good stuff here. Incomplete hiring and intake process. Yes, Kenneth, I would agree with that as well. Yep. Differences of opinion. Yep. To make work challenging. Okay, Patrick. Managers need to rise above and understand all types of people to produce. Yep, Jerry. All right, so I'm going to give you my list. Here's my list of why difficult employees exist. Number one, ineffective management. Okay, now, you know, I've led up to this in that we've talked about how something that could be different can end up turning into something difficult. And I referenced that some of that is because of maybe the manager's inability to know how to manage someone like that. First of all, number one, being aware of that person's innate needs or their social drivers. And also, too, now that I know this, what do I do with it? Or how do I handle it effectively? So I see it as ineffective management and the personal power of the manager. So here's what I mean by this. Go back to the grid where it was an employee or team member that has a high need to direct and a manager that has a low need to direct. If that manager who has a low need to direct has strong self-esteem and does not have their own sense of personal power, here's what happens. The person with the need to direct will take over the group. They'll run roughshod over the group. And the manager with the low need to direct will not only not use their personal power to manage the situation, they won't even use their positional power. So in some respects, positional power is not as effective if the person doesn't have the personal power to even leverage their positional power. And related to that then is also inconsistencies in the model of the manager and the message. For those of you writing notes, I really encourage you to write down this question. Am I communicating unintentional messages to my staff? And then part B to that would be, what are some unintentional messages that I'm communicating to my staff? Do I model what I expect? Do I model what I teach? So that is part of, and this is all about the self-evaluation, not only for yourself, but also if you're in HR and, you know, for your leadership team as well. So ineffective management relates to personal power and messaging. Next, a lack of coaching. And in a lack of coaching, I see a lack of consistent feedback where you're communicating, you're building a rapport, you're setting boundaries. You have that kind of rapport with someone will be willing to listen to you, where they want to be loyal to you. I believe there's a lot of a lack of coaching going on in organizations today. Next, unclear expectations, and I know one of you guys had said that earlier. Please know this, just because you think they know doesn't mean they know. Okay? And so people have a lot on their plate, they've got a lot of distractions, and I think it's important that we consistently communicate. Now, one thing I want to say very candidly from my heart and very humbly here is I know that a lot of people who become managers are thrown into situations, and I call it baptized by fire. And some of you are still filling the flames, right? Many people are moved into management without any training whatsoever. And they get into the situation, and they're expected to be really effective managers, and it's almost like, what I believe, because of the lack of really good career pathing, the only way to earn more money or to advance your career is to go into management. And honestly, I've seen it. I know people who don't really want to be in management, but that's kind of like the only option that they have. So if that applies to you, I just want to really encourage you to recommit to owning 100% of the role that you have. Because without it, you'll be flailing back and forth, and you'll be undermining all of your talents and your energy that you can use and exert to be the best manager that you can be. So it's being honest with yourself. For those of you who manage other managers, it's helping them be honest with taking 100% ownership for, okay, this is our reality today. Yes, this might not be my ideal career path at the moment, but hey, I've got these folks. Yes, they're all these different generations. People have needs. It is more challenging to be a manager today than it was, let's say, 20 or 25, 30 years ago. I mean, that's what I believe. So it's about that ownership, and part of that is being able to do the things that I'm talking about here on the slide, and that is communicating regularly and really giving effective coaching. Next would be spotty, if any, performance management. I was at SHRM, Florida, 2014 in Orlando several months ago, and I was having conversations with many people about their performance management systems, and I was actually kind of surprised at how many companies either don't have formal performance management or still do like appraisals by paper. Without any kind of real process in place to track and document and engage employees with their own feedback and that sort of thing. So I think spotty performance management, if none at all, is part of that also. Next, very, very important, the coachability of the person. All right, so let's pose this question. What would you say are the qualities of a coachable person? What would you say are the qualities of a coachable person? Let's see what those are. Qualities of a coachable person. By the way, this is an important list for you to have as well. Qualities of a coachable person. Willingness. Willing to listen. Willing to listen, not defensive. Undefensive. Boy, a lot of listening and undefensive in here. Self-aware that they are not perfect. Okay, it's a great one. Wendy, excellent. Approachable, great, Mark. Ability to change. Okay, Ryan, all right, now, ability to change is super important. As I share these, in fact, I'm going to go back. I'm going to invite you to write these down because it's a great list coming from the collective here. It's willing to listen, not being defensive, being self-aware that they're not perfect, approachable, able to change. That's super important. Someone who is open-minded, strong work ethic, wants to increase their own skills to become a better employee. Nicole, that's super important also, yes. There's a very important word in your answer, Nicole, and that is want. Accepts criticism, absolutely. Wanting to learn. A person who wants to grow with the company. Great point, Michael, yep. Because there's got to be alignment. If you guys are tired of hearing the phrase, I'm just going to only say it once, and that is engagement and accepting and really connecting with the company. That's all part of this theme as well as engagement. Admit you don't know and willingness to learn. Eric, excellent. Humble, Patrick, excellent. Good attitude, Fran. Good listener, ability to take criticism. Cooperative, Patrick, willing to change, willingness to change, able to admit they can do better, sees their work as an adventure. Oh, Jerry, I love that. All right, so coachability of an employee, that they are able to receive feedback, that they want to learn and grow, that they are able to change, and they are willing to change. Okay, now I need to make a distinction here. There are some people, great hearts, want to change, want to do a good job. That's want to change. Then there's able to change. And this is really an important point. And I know you guys know this. There are people in some of our organizations where they really have some specific emotional and mental needs. And they may be willing to change, but they are not able to change because they need help beyond what's in our job descriptions. As someone who does coaching as part of my practice, I absolutely have seen that there are people who, when I'm coaching them, it's clear that it's beyond my capabilities and they need professional help. I actually have on my staff in my consulting practice 2 therapists for that very reason. Is because sometimes it's something extra. And I think as managers, we kind of need to discern that a little bit. Not that we need to become psychotherapists, but I think it's important that we're able to do a little bit discerning about, okay, when is it way? Because then, you spend your time trying to get this person to do stuff, right? And you're not getting the responses, you're not getting the results. Well, there could be a really deeper reason, beyond what's really in our job description. So coachability is really super important. I'm going to share Robert's comment. Joanne, we interview people to do a job that seems to place the manager's role in the place of raising employees emotionally instead of getting a job complete done. Just saying. Okay, Robert, I totally get you. And I think that this is an excellent, honest discussion about expectations. And I think it's about philosophy, and by the way, I'm not telling you should or shouldn't have any kind of philosophy, because your company may have, or you as a manager might have a certain philosophy that you hold to, and I respect that. I want to open up the possibility that sometimes our expectations don't match the reality of what's needed in the marketplace. So let's say that, so I just want to say, being flexible and open about possibilities about how to manage differently or what to expect from their employees. Now, do I say we need to hire better on the front end? There are some assessments for emotional intelligence, let's say. There's some assessments for best fit, best hire. If we have things in our talent management toolkit that we can use that can really minimize this, that's what I'm shooting for. That's what I'm hoping for, and that's what I do with my clients, is help them. Can we 100% eliminate it? That like be eliminating humanity, right? But can we manage it in a way to minimize it? Are we using all the tools at our disposal to be able to do that? So, Robert, I totally appreciate your comment. All right. Then also too, under reasons for why difficult employees exist, and I think it's poor leadership. And I put in poor leadership, company culture and practices. There are many managers and also leaders of organizations that don't understand that the culture of the organization actually impacts the behavior of an employee. And that culture is a part of leadership. In fact, I've seen several quotes lately from more famous CEOs that culture trumps everything else in many ways, because it's that collective peer pressure that influences behavior. Because when you look throughout, by the way, I consider peer pressure part of a manager's toolkit. That may sound weird, but when you look at what has happened throughout human history, constructively and also destructively, by the way, because of peer pressure, there have been many major things that have been impacted culturally because of peer pressure. Why not use peer pressure collectively and constructively to help in the realm of performance management? And leaders can do that by creating a culture that supports the outcomes and the behaviors that they truly want. So I appreciate your comments on this, on the why do difficult employees exist. Let's look at then what are some initial remedies as we again lay the foundation for other things we'll be adding to this in our series. But before I do that, I do want to share with you why it even matters. Okay, I know you're here today because I just respect everybody who's taking the time to come. So I know you guys all have very busy schedules. But I also want to say there is a reason why it matters, not only to your mental health, to your lack of stress, to retaining your talent, but also to impacting your profits. There was a recent, well, I'm going to go back to a recent study done by the Future Foundation, and it's in Inc. magazine. And by the way, the link to this article will be on the website with all the resources. And they interviewed several people. Well, in fact, let me just read it specifically so that way I can get it right. They were looking at, the name of the article is called The Hidden Costs of Poor People Management. That's the name of the article. And what they did is they looked at what's going on related to poor hiring and people management and what they could adopt for best practices. And they wanted to actually find some quantifiable research. So this company hired the Future Foundation to interview 700 executives in 7 countries. So it was the United Kingdom, Sweden, the Netherlands, United States, Hong Kong, India, and Australia. And in their polling, it revealed that the current approaches to people management are draining corporate profits. Okay, are draining corporate profits. So here's what some of the statistics were. U.S. managers waste an average of 34 days per year dealing with underperformance. Senior executives claim they spend 7 weeks a year or more or over an hour per day managing badly performing employees. Next, overall the U.S. is devoting $105 billion a year to correcting problems associated with poor hiring and people management practices. This shortfall is worth about 1.05% of the gross domestic product, but that's kind of mind-blowing. I can't even wrap my mind around that. The reason businesses waste the talent and potential of their workforces and fail to match the right people to the right jobs. And the problems increase with organizational size. U.S. managers in larger corporations are spending about 41 days or 8 weeks per year on managing poor performers. That's the result of the survey. So we can see that we can actually quantify that managing difficult employees or people management actually has financial impact on our organizations. And in fact, in part 3, we'll actually go through costing and do some exercises around how do you put quantitative numbers to this situation. We'll actually go through an exercise and we'll learn how to do that for those of you who don't know how to do that already. All right, so what is effective performance management? As we close, I just want to give a quick summary of what I believe those are. And again, I'm encouraging you to use this as a checklist. Look at what's going on in your own organizations. We've got a couple of poll questions that we'll go through very quickly as we round out our time together. Okie dokie. Effective performance management is clear expectations, goals, and results. Next, ongoing coaching, a reminder of those goals, both formal and informal, encouragement, feedback, teaching, and instructing. So I call those one-on-ones. One of the management principles that I teach in my management seminars is high accountability equals higher performance. Okay, that's number one. High accountability equals higher performance. Also, public accountability equals higher performance. So if you have high accountability, you will have higher performance. So when I work with companies, we talk about doing informal and formal coaching. And one of the informals is one-on-ones, on average of once every month or 6 weeks. So our first poll question is, does your organization do your managers in your organization do informal one-on-ones on a regular basis? So Elon, you can pop that poll up there and let's see what we got for those. Do your managers practice informal one-on-ones on a regular basis? Okay. Okay. 36. Okay, so 34 have said yes, 66 have said no so far. We'll quickly. Yes, no. Yeah, so it's about a third of our attendees today say yes, and the rest say no. Oh, now we're at 71%. Okay, 71% of people voted. Anybody else want to chime in? That's the majority of the people in the group, 71%. We're at 68 no, 32 yes. Okay, we'll close the poll. Okay, very good. Alrighty. Now, the next one then in our effective performance management is tied to business objectives. So part of your effective performance management layout and strategy should be tied to business objectives. Next, effective performance management should track and document, should allow for tracking and document, not only by managers, but also by team members. Here's what we've seen. For those who are actively engaged in effective performance management, the engagement of employees go up because they are actively considering their own performance as they go throughout the year because they're documenting it. And it's in a constructive coaching kind of way, not like, oh, I got to document this in case so I don't get in trouble. It's a very constructive, it's really talent management, it's nurturing potential, it's encouraging, it's that sort of thing. So it's in the spirit of those kinds of attitudes as you're setting them up and supporting the success of the people on your team. So tracking and documenting. And by the way, when you do this, with some of the software that I use, when it comes time for an appraisal, oh my gosh, this is like the one thing people can't stand is it's appraisal time, right? It's a pain in the butt. You can't remember what you did yesterday, and if your employees have to do it, they don't remember what they did, 6 months ago, and then you have to tell someone what they did in February, but you're doing the appraisal in December. It's crazy. That's why it's very painful. So with effective performance management, all their activity is tracked all year. So by the time you get to formal appraisals, it's a no-brainer. No one's blindsided. People know what's going to happen. It's documented. The appraisal format is very easy to fill out, very easy to deliver. That's one of the great benefits of effective performance management. And then, of course, what makes that all really good is software that facilitates the experience with ease. And what I'm describing really is possible. So our next poll question is, do you use performance management software that helps facilitate all the things that are on this checklist? The question is, do you have performance management software that facilitates all the things that are on this checklist? And very quickly, if you could just answer that, and let's see what we got. Polls in progress, and we have 52 have voted. This is a quickie, guys, so we can just answer quickly and close the poll real quickly as well. Okay, 61 have voted. Okay, got a couple more. 10% have said yes, 90 have said no. Okay, we're just about 70%. Okay, so we're at 90 no and 10 yeses, just for you guys to know for the group. Okay, about 70 people have voted. Okay, very good. So that's really our checklist. This is what we're shooting for. My suggestion is this: the pain and a lot of things that are challenging in management will be minimized or reduced, not eliminated, reduced to degrees depending on the level of performance management you have in place and the knowledge about where someone's behavior is at. Are they difficult? Is it unhealthy? Or really, is it just different? So as we close, I just want to encourage you to consider these questions. Is it possible that my difficult is just different? What am I doing or not doing to allow the difficult behavior to exist? What will I need to change to impact it? Who else do I need to have a conversation with about this? And then I want you to, in your own time, add questions to this that you'll need, and then I want to encourage you with an action. And I call it the action challenge, which is called the Power 6. It's really, by the way, this is a great coaching tool as well, is to use the who, what, when, where, how, and why as it relates to your performance management of difficult people. Who are difficult? What do I want to do about it? When should I take action? Where should it happen? How do I want to address it? And why does it matter? So you can take that Power 6 and formulate your own question with it, but they're great coaching questions to really start to lay a foundation for how you want to leverage this webinar series to really address some of the challenges in your organization related to difficult people. Okay? All right. We are just at time. It's someone said gotcha. Good, Rob. All right, you guys, we're going to close. I know you guys have lots of things to do. I hope this was helpful. Is there any comments before we close? Any comments? I'll read them out. Was it helpful? Was it helpful? Did it give you a framework to start with? Okay, let me give you what's coming up in the calendar. Part 2, Part 3. This is the resource page. If you go to the resource page, www, it's my website, and you'll see right at the top of the website where it says series. Click on that link. It'll take you to the resource page. You'll be able to get the slides. You can download them, the link to the study that I shared, and any other supporting things. I'll have stuff up there later about emotional intelligence and other things that can support what we're doing for the entire series. Okay. What software would you recommend? Very helpful. Thanks. Hey, Phil, that's great. I would say this program is being underwritten by Synergita. That is one of the softwares that I use. And hey, I would recommend that you set up a demo and take a look at it. I think you'll be blown away by its usefulness. It literally honors everything on that. Plus, with the training that I give for coaching and performance management, we can pretty much help your organization or help you if you need it individually, okay? Thank you. Very helpful reinforcement for what needs to be done. Extremely well. Oh, thank you. You know, Kenneth, I feel like I'm talking in a bubble. You guys can tell I'm usually in front of people. I usually do like keynotes and on-site, so it's interesting to talk through the computer. Got it crazy. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, you guys please email me. I'm here for you. I'm happy to serve. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you October 3rd on Friday. Namaste. Godspeed. We'll talk to you again soon.